The Archivist. My name is the Archivist. The official record states the year is 2025. Here, in this library of secrets, we measure time differently by the weight of the truths we uncover. My function is to preserve these truths, to curate the files that have been officially closed but are not yet understood. I analyze the anatomy of a perfect crime, searching for the single, flawed cell that will cause the entire lie to collapse. Today, I am opening a file that is a masterclass in deception. A story of a death so flawless, its only crime was its own impossibility. Welcome to the archive. This is file number 901, The Silent Sonata. The subject was Maxim Volkov, a painter whose work was celebrated in the world's most exclusive galleries and condemned by critics as grotesque and nihilistic. He painted canvases of beautiful decay, of dying stars and fractured cityscapes. He was, by all accounts, a tortured genius who lived and breathed his art. His studio was his sanctuary, a large, converted warehouse space he called the conductor's room. It was an acoustic fortress, a room within a room, suspended on magnetic buffers. Once the heavy, vault-like door was deadbolt from the inside, the silence was so absolute it was said you could hear the sound of your own blood flowing. On a cold October morning, his agent found him. After 2 days of unanswered calls, she used her emergency key. The police found Maxim Volkov dead, hanging from a thick rope tied to a high-ceiling beam. The scene was serene, almost theatrical, and in front of him, on the easel, was the painting, a colossal canvas, 2 meters tall, depicting a photorealistic self-portrait of his own death. The clothes, the knot, the expression of anguish, all identical. The paint, according to the first responders, was still wet. The coroner's report was swift. A massive, fatal brain aneurysm. Natural causes, likely brought on by extreme stress. The official ruling was a suicide, and the painting was deemed his final, macabre statement. The case was closed. But not for everyone. Detective Isabelle Varga stood in the silent studio long after the body was removed. The case was clean. Too clean. It's a spectacle, Captain, she argued later in his office. A man paints a 2-meter canvas of his own death and then hangs himself? That's not a suicide note. It's a confession, just not his own. Her captain was unmoved. He was a mad artist, Varga. Let it go. But Varga couldn't. She knew the most perfect stories were often the most elaborate lies. Varga's investigation began with the people in Volkov's orbit. There was only one. Serafina, a rising artist, Volkov's former protege and, as the tabloids whispered, his secret lover. Varga brought her in. In the cold, sterile interrogation room, Serafina was the picture of grief. Maxim was a storm, she said, her voice trembling just enough. His genius was a fire that was consuming him. He was paranoid, convinced his rivals were stealing his techniques. The pressure, I think it just became too much. She spoke of his dark moods, his isolation. She was expertly building the narrative for Varga, the tragic, unavoidable suicide of a tortured artist. When was the last time you spoke to him? Varga asked, her tone neutral. About a week ago, Serafina replied, dabbing a tear from her eye. He said he needed to be alone, to finish his masterpiece. It was a perfect performance, except for one flaw, one tiny, insignificant data point. Varga had already pulled Volkov's phone records. There was a brief, 30-second call from Serafina's number to his, just 2 nights before his death. When Varga presented this, Serafina didn't flinch. Oh, it must have been a pocket dial. I didn't even realize. We didn't speak. It was a plausible lie, but it was a lie nonetheless. It was the first crack in the canvas. Frustrated by dead ends, Varga turned to the only thing that didn't fit, the detail everyone else dismissed. The phantom sound recorded in the studio. A meaningless glitch. It was the only loose thread, and she decided to pull on it. This decision led her to Dr. Eris Thorne, a forensic acoustician obsessed with sonic impossibilities. In her chaotic lab, surrounded by screens of glowing waveforms, Eris was initially dismissive. A digital anomaly in a closed suicide case, detective? I'm a scientist, not a ghost hunter. Just listen to it, Varga insisted. Tell me it's nothing. Eris listened. Her expression shifted from boredom to intense curiosity. She spent the next week deconstructing the anomaly. This is not a glitch, she finally told Varga, pointing to a complex spectral graph. It's a real, physical event, but its acoustic properties are impossible. The sound has no reverberation, no echo. It's like a whisper in a vacuum. Eris tried to replicate it, running simulations of everything from a breaking glass to a snapping carbon fiber rod. Nothing matched. The recorded sound was too clean, too singular. Defeated, she was about to give up. It was then that Varga brought her the last of the evidence from Volkov's studio, his research notebooks. Eris found his final project, bioacoustic resonance. He was mapping the unique resonant frequencies of organic matter. He believed everything living had a keynote, a frequency that could, theoretically, cause it to shatter. His notes were filled with equations, a search for the keynote of life. And there, scribbled in a margin, was an algorithm Eris had never seen. An equation for the precise resonant frequency of a human capillary wall. A cold dread washed over her. She ran a new simulation, modeling what would happen if a sound wave at this exact frequency was introduced to a suspended blood vessel. On her screen, the simulated vessel held for a moment, then shuddered violently and burst. The simulation software registered the sound of that microscopic rupture. Eris isolated the sound wave. She placed it side by side with the phantom glitch from Finch's audio log. They were a perfect, horrifying match. She looked at Varga, her face pale. My God, detective. It wasn't the sound of the weapon. It was the weapon. The killer never needed to enter the room. From an adjacent building, using a stolen piece of experimental technology, Serafina had aimed an inaudible sonic wave at the conductor's room. The soundproofing was useless against a perfectly tuned vibration. The wave passed through the walls and into Adrian Finch's brain. The glitch was the sound of his own body breaking from the inside, captured by his own microphone. A silent sonata. It was the perfect murder, and the painting was her alibi, a macabre piece of performance art to convince the world he was just another mad artist. Varga used this new, impossible truth to get a warrant. In Serafina's studio, they found the sonic emitter and evidence that she had been studying Volkov's research for months. Her jealousy of his fame had curdled into a murderous obsession. She didn't just want to kill him. She wanted to frame his legacy, turning his final act into a spectacle of madness, not genius. The file was closed, this time for good. It reveals a fundamental truth we often overlook. The most important part of any anatomy is not the surface, but the layers beneath. You must be willing to cut through the beautiful, horrifying canvas to see the faint, charcoal sketch of the truth hidden underneath. This file is now closed, but the archive is infinite. There are countless other paradoxes, other secrets waiting in the marrow of their stories. To unlock the next file and continue your access to this collection, subscribe to the Marrow Files. If the truth in this record resonated with you, leave a like and share your own theories in the comments below. The archive is always watching.
Seahorse or whale? Owl or alligator? Swamp or ice castle? Spaceship or forest?